Hey, hello everybody, welcome back to Momo versus MTG. Today we'll be taking a look at the alternative Wincons in the Commander format, and this is the official tier list or ranking system of them. Not really. This is just a fun idea I had. Instead of taking a look at, usually personal Commander deck techs and all that good stuff, take a different direction and really explore the Commander format in general, and this is, I think, a perfect way to start. So yeah, I'll be going through, I think all the alternative win cons, bearing in mind not infect, poison, commander damage, that kind of stuff, but really the cards that say you win the game, right? That's what I want to take a look at. Without further ado, let's jump right into it. And again, I'm ranking these on a point system, but it's kind of like whose line is it anyways, where the points just don't matter. So take it with a grain of salt, and without further ado, let's jump into it. Starting off the bat, this is just an example. We have Amulet of Quoz for 6. And what I'll be ranking these criteria on is the build around potential. So can you put this in your deck? Is your deck's dynamic going to change because of this card? You're really putting pieces together to help further this plan, or is it just a 2-card combo where you really don't need to sacrifice that much space? So I'm looking for difficulty. How hard is it to pull it off? Basically, if it requires a lot of cards to set up, it's going to be harder. That kind of deal. 2-card combos, going to be less difficult and inspiring. So is this going to take your deck in a direction that's not normally taken, right? That's what I want to be taking a look at. I'll dive into that a little further. And my personal rating, which that probably matters the least. And this one got, a 17 out of 40, which that's close to the middle of the line. That's basically the same as just like winning the game. Cool. That's like thin line, you win the game. Cool. Higher end of that is, wow, this card's pretty unique and stuff, or like I like to see it, that kind of deal. So it'll be higher to 40. Or if it's closer to 0, it's just like either a card I want to see, not hard to build around, all that good stuff. Not really inspiring. So without further ado, let's jump into it. So we have, yes, the Amulet of Quoz. And this card's kind of funny. It doesn't say win the game per se. But if in a 1v1, it would be. So, for example, remove it from your deck if you're not playing for ante, which is a mechanic where you basically were able to acquire cards from another player. This was a very early on concept. It's not really practiced too much anymore, but it's like you put up a card for line that if you lose the game, you lose the card itself to the other player. But anywho, let's keep reading. Sacrifice Amulet of Quoz. Target opponent may ante the top card of the library. If they don't, you flip a coin. If you win the flip, that player loses the game. If you lose the flip, you lose the game. Activate only during your upkeep. It kind of reminds me of the Shadow Realm vibes, where you lose something important if you lose the game. So it's kind of neat to see, and you really don't see any more in Magic, and because of that, it is banned if you play with this card in most formats, all formats. So yeah, it's a really funny card. Moving on, we have Approach of the Second Sun for 6 mana and a plains. So the build around potential, I give 4 out of 10, difficulty 4 out of 10, a 2, a 6, for a total of 16. So the build around potential, dive a little bit into that, where it's your deck is probably going to be wanting to either draw cards anyways or have big spells, so it's like might as well throw this in. And in particular, there are a lot of things. I give the difficulty like a 4 out of 10, but I don't know if that number really holds, because it's 7 mana, and there are plenty of combos which I'll look at, just win the game on the spot with it. Inspiring, I don't really say. You're not doing anything different. Maybe you're playing high CMC cards, but if you have a draw engine in white and whatever colors, you might just throw it in for the heck of it. And I give it a 6 because I think it's kind of neat. Most of the times I've seen, a player win with this, I'm like, oh, that's pretty neat. They kind of dug through their deck, or they've pulled up a funny combo. So, just to name a couple, you have, Darksteel's Reversal, of course, is the big one, and on EDH Rec, you could take a look. There's plenty of different combos here, where you can do it in one shot instead of putting the card to the bottom. Apologies, let's read it. If Approach of the Second Sun was cast from your hand, and you cast another spell named Approach of the Second Sun this game, you win the game. Otherwise, put approach for the second sun into its owner library, 7th from the top, you gain 7 life. So the part I like about this really is it puts a clock in the game. You're versing some life gain deck or some stacks piece is like you're not getting around his interaction or his, debilitating permanence. So approach the second sun is a neat way to get around that and kind of puts a clock in the game. I like it. But the clock usually is the same turn it's cast if you have enough mana, like namely Narset Reversal. Just wins the game on the spot. If you cast it, counter it with this, then you cast it again. So just bear that in mind. If you see this in Commander format, just try to see what the opponent's doing, because they'll be just doing something sneaky sometimes. Next up, cooler card, contrary, form of the approach of the second sun for 5 mana. So discounted, let's give a read. When this enchantment enters the battlefield, you gain 7 life, and you become a card until you leave your library or that library is shuffled. Put yourself 7 from the top, bouncing the cards on top of you on your head. When you draw yourself, you win the game. When 1 or more cards fall off your head, exile them and all cards on your head, then sacrifice this enchantment. Bro, much cooler card. The build around potential is a 0 out of 10. It is a banned card, not a real card. Comes from one of the Infinity sets, whatnot. Difficulty is probably 9 out of 10, and this varies, based on your balancing skills. Inspiring, yeah, no one's putting cards on top of their head, usually Magic. I think that's really neat. And my personal rating is a 10 out of 10. So this gets, to the upper limits. If you could play with this, it'd be maybe a flawless score almost. But unfortunately, it is banned for that reason. But a funny card nonetheless. If you have it on Infinity Night, this could be a fun one to build around. Moving on, we have Helix Pinnacle for a forest. Enchantment Shroud. Put X tower counters on it where you could just pay mana into it. And at the beginning of your upkeep, if there are 100 or more tower counters on Helix Pinnacle, you win the game. So build around potential, put it right in the middle of the road. 5 out of 10. Because green usually is getting a lot of mana and doubling counters, so maybe it just fits in for the heck of it. But you could go all in on this plan and make it your main win con, sure. But oftentimes, you can probably just sneak this into a lot of decks, especially, mono green, rampy ramp. Because it's just a mana sink at the end of the day where, for the heck of it, let's just pump it up and try to win the game. Difficulty 4 out of 10. Mainly just asking to build a lot of mana, and over the course of the game, you could probably eventually pull this off. Seaboard Muse, tap your lands, all sorts of ways. You're doing this every turn. Not really super inspiring if you're just making a ton of mana and then looking for an outlet in a way. Just personally think that it doesn't try to take your deck in a different direction. Enchantment Tribal, you just throw it in as a cantrip half the time. So 2 out of 10, and I think it's a 3 out of 10. So on the lower end, but it's a win con nonetheless. But on the contrary, the cooler card, as luck would have it, hexproof instead of shroud, even better. And whenever you would roll 1 or more die, put a number of luck counters on, as luck would have it, equal to the result. Then if there are 100 or more luck counters on, as luck would have it, you win the game. I think it's just a cooler card, right? Because instead of, trying to build infinite mana, you're trying to build infinite dice roll. So the build around potential, I think, could be an 8 out of 10. Right? Because you're probably going to have a lot of synergies in your deck with dice, and either in mono green or something else, whatever you're throwing this in, could be really interesting to see. And shout out to the baubles that just came out with Fallout. We'll take a look at that. Yeah, really fun build around. I think this could be super sick. Difficulty 6 out of 10. It's kind of halfway because you do need a lot of dice rolling mechanics, which there are plenty of in Magic, but I think it's a bit harder than dumping infinite mana into something, and it is pretty inspiring. Because now you're building something around the dice rolling mechanic and building a deck out of it. I think it's great. And I really like this card. If I saw it, I wouldn't be mad. However, 29 out of 40, not bad. It is banned. Again, one of those unset cards. No go, no go, unless you rule 0 or something. Moving on. Azor's Electrocounts for 3. And then hybrid mana Azorius for 2, right? So this is creature, human advisor. Beginning of your upkeep, put a file buster counter on Azorius executors. Then if there are 5 or more file buster counters on it, you win the game. Whenever a source deals damage to you, remove a counter. So build around potential, I'd say, 8 out of 10. You have to really gear towards the stacks heavy in a way where you can prevent a lot of damage to yourself, and keep this creature around. So you could really dig into that. So it requires an interesting play style, mainly pillow forts, right? So you don't want to take any damage. And once this comes out, you're going to be a target, especially in a 4-player format. So, you have to do some digging to make this work. I'd say it's a 6 out of 10 because, again, like, if damage is dealt to you, counters are removed. But in a, decent world, a foreseeable world where you just proliferate the heck out of this instead of going around 5 turns putting a counter on, that's probably what you're going to do. Either proliferate or move counters around of some sort. And it's kind of inspiring, in a way. But, really, you're just playing pillow forts, I think. Unless you have a different direction. And I give it a 4 out of 10. So it's right in the middle of the road, 22. Not bad card. Cool. Moving on. Barren Glory. What a card. For 4 mana and 2 planes, you get enchantment at the beginning of your upkeep. If you control no other permanents, other cards other than Barren Glory, and have no cards in your hand, you win the game. I like this card a lot, as you can see. Build around potential, I think it's a 10 out of 10. Because you're really putting some interesting cards in your deck that really try to take advantage of this. And your whole game plan, right, is probably going to be somewhat around this card and similar things, which there isn't too many. So your deck's going to look a little wonky from the rest, I believe. And yeah, difficult kind of is. 8 out of 10. You have to make it around to your upkeep with just this out. So either discard your hand, sacrifice your board, all that good stuff. Not the easiest thing to do, but there are ways. I think it's very inspiring because you're really trying to take a deck in a different direction, right? Like instead of any other normal win con. This is pretty unique, right? I don't see too many cards like this, and I give it a 10 out of 10. If I saw one play this, somehow win with it, I'm like, great, that was dope. Because really, when it comes down to it, yes, there are combos that make this a 1 or 2 card combo. However, they're pretty tough to pull off, nonetheless. But going forward from that, yeah, cool cards because, I think it's pretty tough to pull off just in general. And shout out to the Cheese Stands Alone, which is basically the same card. It's banned. And these cards here, the one on the left is banned. But basically, you're kind of wearing your birthday suit out there, right? Like, you have nothing out there. You have no interaction to hold up once you try to fire this off going forward. So you're really, you got big cojones is one way to say it. So if someone wins with this, shout out to you, man. I would love to see it. Would be super cool to see. Going forward from there, we have Battle of Wits for 5 mana, 2 of it being islands. Enchantment at the beginning of your upkeep. If you have 20 or more cards in your library, you win the game. So again, the build around potential for this is 0. In the Commander format, it is banned. It is not banned. I apologize. It's not able to do because your deck can only have 100 cards in it. That being said, yeah, it would be difficult. It would be a 10 out of 10 and inspiring if there's some way you could add cards to your deck. Sure, very different mechanic than most decks are going for, and I give it a 10 out of 10. If I saw this and somehow saw someone win with this, I'd go crazy. But unfortunately, it's impossible in the Commander format. But it's really a unique way to win the game, which I've never seen. So, Battle of Wits there for you. Moving on, Biovisionary for 3 mana, 2 of it being Simic. At the beginning of your end step, if you control 4 or more other creatures named Biovisionary, you win the game. So, building around potentials, I'd say it's a 5 out of 10. Simic colors, you're usually doing some sort of cloning, but maybe you're leaning to a little heavier to create copies either of this guy or some other creature. A lot of Simic stuff does that, doubles tokens, token creatures, that kind of deal. So difficulty is not too hard since you're doing a lot of that, but it is pretty inspiring. Because usually you don't see duplicate names of cards. So if you create a whole bunch of token copies of something, I think it's pretty neat. Cool direction to take something. And I give it a 6 out of 10, right in the middle of the road, and I bump it up a notch because it lets Simic players end the game, don't hate me, instead of dirtling around with their mana. So without further ado, you get a 21 out of 40. Pretty cool. It's a Wincon. And again, there are plenty of combos that just work with this. Yeah. Moving right along. Yeah, plenty. Yep, you get it. Plenty. Yep, there are plenty of combos that win the game with it. Cool. Celestial Convergence for 2 and 2 planes. You get enchantment. Comes into play with 7 omen counters on it. At the beginning of your upkeep, remove an omen counter from Celestial Convergence. If there are no omen counters on Celestial Convergence, the player with the highest life total wins the game. If 2 or more players are tied for the highest life total, the game is a draw. So I think especially Magic, to see the draw mechanic is super neat. You don't really see it often. However, this is different than your average life gain win con because this gives a chance for anybody to win the game, really. Right? Because if they can knock you down from your life total to below theirs and it goes to your upkeep, then that player's going to win the game or something. So it creates more of a dynamic than just a Felidar Guardian, which we'll take a look at or something. So build around potential is a 6 out of 10 because not only are you doing life gain, but you're also trying to protect yourself from the crackback once you play this. So pretty cool. Same deal with the difficulty. Again, usually you have a ton of life, but you got to keep it there. And if people know you're playing this, yeah, they're going to go for you first. And I think it's pretty inspiring because it's a neat way to not only gain your own life, but keep your opponents down at the same time. So I think it's a different direction that way. And I think it's an 8 out of 10. Out of all the life gain triggers to win the game, I think it's one of the cooler ones. So shout out to this card. I like it. And the rating system likes it too. Very cool. Speaking of which, then we have Felidar Sovereign. For 4 mana and 2 planes, we get this creature. Cat Beast Vigilance Lifelink, and at the beginning of your upkeep, if you have 40 more life, you win the game. Build around potential, same idea. You're trying to do a lot of life gain, protect your life total, yada yada. You're just not trying to lower your opponents. It's kind of like Solitaire in a way. Difficulty, I'd say it's a 0 out of 10. Because if you could play this card, and especially in a Loro or something, play this card and just win the game the next turn off the bat without doing anything else, yeah, it kind of just wins the game. So in that same aspect, I don't think it's super inspiring. Like you're doing life gain like versus the last one, but it really doesn't. You could just play this and then just try to protect your life total. You actually don't have to gain any life, so that's why I give it a 0 out of 10. And I give it middle of the road. It's a win con. So total 11 out of 40. Kind of neat. On the other end, Test of Endurance for 2 and 2 planes. Enchantment. Beginning of your upkeep, you have 50 more life, you win the game. Yeah, it's enchantment, hard to get off the table. However, you can't just play this card and win the game unless you're in the Loro. Right? Haha. Anyways, build around potential, 6 out of 10. Same idea. Gaining life. 5 out of 10. You got to gain some life. You have to somehow gain 10 life. But again, if players know you have this card, of course, they're going to go after you, and you have to fend it off. So yeah, it's not just cut and dry, play us, win the game. And yeah, it's a bit more inspiring, because you actually have to gain some life. And I give it a 6 out of 10. Wouldn't mind seeing this. And this is like right the middle of the road. If I were to, die of just regular combat damage, or lose the game because of this, sure. Yeah, they're about on equal terms, so kind of cool. Moving forward, we have Chance Encounter, right? For 2 and 2 mountains, you get enchantment. Whenever you win a coin flip, put a luck counter on Chance Encounter. Beginning of your upkeep, if Chance Encounter has 10 or more luck counters on it, you win the game. Cool. Build potential, 8 out of 10. Yeah, your whole deck's mainly going to be focused around coin flipping, all that good stuff. It's going to be very different than any other deck, usually. Difficulty is, that should be 5 out of 10, right? Because it's either heads or tails. That's a joke, right? Either 50-50, you win the flip or you don't every time. It's always a 50-50. So, funny. difficulty there. But, truth be told is you may have a lot of coin flip, but it's going to be a little harder to pull off than normal. Yeah, it's inspiring too. Again, it's, different direction that most decks would take. You're not going to really fit this in any other deck, so it's really prompts you to look at all the cards that can either advance this game plan, flipping coins, that kind of thing. I'd give it an 8 out of 10. I think this card's pretty neat. Really cool alternative win con for a total of 27 out of 40. So pretty cool. And let's just go through a scenario where we try to win the game real fast, right? So, okay, let's take 20 coins. Let's flip them. Bam, because that should just win the game. So base value, 20 coins should be your average of winning the game. I'm not a statistic major. Don't hound on me, right? So let's say we called heads. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Cool. 10. We win the game. Kind of neat. So I like to see it. Anyways, moving forward from there. Yeah. We have Coalition Victory, right? For 3 mana in Wooburg, one of each color symbol. Sorcery. You win the game if you control a land of each basic land type and a creature of each color. Cool. Build around potential. These are really 1 out of 10. All you have to do is add a basic land of each type. Have your commander on the battlefield or something if you have a 5-colored commander. So the difficulty is really not that hard. And then 8 mana total. And it's not super inspiring. Maybe you have some backup 5-colored creatures and stuff. Ways to ramp, cool. And 0 out of 10. So it gets a 4 out of 40 from me. Yeah, not super inspiring, and it is banned. Hope it stays banned. Anyways, moving on. Darksteel Reactor for 4. A card you used to see a lot more back in the day, but not as much anymore. However, charge counters are coming out with Fallout, so you might see it a lot more. Anyways. It's an artifact, indestructible, and at the beginning of your upkeep, you may put a charge counter on it, and when it has 20 or more charge counters on it, you win the game. So, again, this could end the game in 20 turns, or we're going to be moving charge counters around naturally, which is probably more the way you're going down. So, yeah, build around potential, 8 out of 10. You're putting a lot of charge counter synergies, that kind of deal. It's not going to be a 2-card combo. Usually you could be building a game plan that not only helps your deck, but helps charge counters and getting to this win con. And yeah, 6 out of 10. It'll take a little bit of setup to get here. It's not super easy. The indestructible keeps it around usually, but, not super easy to pull off, I don't believe, because that kind of deal. And it is inspiring. It takes decks usually in a different direction, because you don't usually see too many charge counter decks. At least anymore, but Fallout coming out, they may have a resurgence, and I like it. I give it an 8 out of 10. So, yeah, really, I think it's a neat alternative win con in most commander decks. Moving forward, Epic Struggle for 2 and Forest. Beginning your upkeep, if you control 20 more creatures, you win the game. So, build around potential, I give it a 7 out of 10, because you're really trying to take the token flood the board with creature strategy and make a win con out of it with just having them there instead of swinging. So kind of cool. I give it a 6 out of 10 because you do have to make it around to your next upkeep with a lot of creatures, which is not the easiest thing to do, but there are definitely ways. And inspiring, it's not super inspiring to throw together just flood the board with creatures, right? We see that all the time, and this just puts a win con behind it. And I give it a 6 out of 10, above average. I wouldn't mind seeing this card and losing to it. So yeah, so it's kind of halfway point, 23. And then that's going to kind of be the same deal for Mortal Kombat. Cooler name, right? But for 2 and 2 black, beginning your upkeep, there are 20 more creature cards in graveyard, you win the game. So similar reasoning here, with the build around potential being a little bit different, where now you want the creatures in your graveyard, which could be easier or harder, depending on, the state of the game. And basically the same difficulty, inspiring, different direction of trying to win the game. All that good stuff. 23 out of 40. I like it. I like it a lot. And then we have these two cards here, right? Hollow Fountain and Gallifrey Stands. Let's take a look at the difference between these cards. Hollow Fountain is 3, right? Can create tokens, cool. Untap a target creature you control, create a token, cool. You could also, for 2 planes, untap 2 target creatures you control, draw a card, cool. Or if you have 5 white sitting around, untap 15 tapped creatures you control, win the game. And I want you to try to find a difference between these two cards. And then for the Gallifrey Stands, legendary enchantment costs a bit more. Enters the battlefield, return all doctor cards from your graveyard to your hand. Okay, kind of cool. Beginning your upkeep, you may put a doctor creature card from your hand in the battlefield. Then if you control 13 or more doctors, you win the game. So, the mana, big difference. Win the game, 15 tapped creatures versus 13 creatures on the battlefield. Similar vibes in that aspect. It's just the thing I like to point out is it's the difference of 2 creatures. Hollow Fountain can be any creature, and Gallifrey has to be doctors, which is a bit harder to pull off, I believe. Hollow Fountain kind of can create creatures on its own and then win the game. So that's why the big difference of these I'll dive into as for the rating. But nothing like Masswood Nexus, Conspiracy, all this good stuff that changes creature types. Yeah, that's not a thing, right? So, that's the other end of the stick where you can turn all your creatures into doctors this way. So, pick your poison on these. Hollow Fountain, I'll give it 15 out of 40. Build around potential, sure. You're going tokens and might as well throw it in, so your whole deck is probably be tokens anyways. Kind of just throw it in a way, but you're trying to have them tap, so I guess that's kind of interesting. Probably not too hard to pull off, because it's easy to create a lot of tokens. Inspiring, not particularly, I don't think. There's nothing new you're trying to do with creating a whole bunch of tokens, you're just trying to do it. And I gave it a 3 out of 10, because you can just play this on a turn where you have 15 creatures. Tap, if they're tapped, already swung, untap them, and then you win. So, a little below the middle of the road. However, Gallifrey Stands, build around potential, yeah, it's either going Doctor Tribal or you're trying to do Conspiracy, Masswood Nexus stuff, turning all your creatures into Doctors, so there is some build around potential for sure. I'd say it's halfway in the road. Having allows you to cheat creatures onto the battlefield, all that good stuff. Inspiring, yeah, could be Doctor Tribal or Conspiracy, so there's different directions you could take it, and I kind of like it. If I saw this card, yeah, I think it's pretty neat. Try to remove the player who plays it, but yeah, that's besides the point. So, 24 out of 40, a little above the average, cool. Then we have Happily Ever After, cool. For 3 mana, you get enchantment. When it enters the battlefield, each player gains 5 life and draws a card. Cool. We love Group Hug. At the beginning of your upkeep, if there are 5 colors among permanents you control, there are 6 or more card types among permanents you control, and there are cards in your graveyard, and your life total is greater than or equal to your starting life total, you win the game. So it's a really cheap effect that shouts group hugging. But it takes a little bit of setup to get there, right? Because that's a lot of different permanent types. The addition of battles helps us a little bit to give an extra permanent type. And it's not always easy to fill up your graveyard or play them all on the battlefield because you probably need to cast an instant or sorcery at some point. So the setup is a decent bit. So I'd say it's a 10 out of 10 for the build round. I get it. Decks are going to have lands, enchantments, artifacts, usually all that good stuff anyways. And to have 5 colors can just be your commander per se. But you need all these things in the right places. So I'd say it's a pretty cool build around. You take your deck in a different direction. Difficulty, 7 out of 10. Because it takes a bit of setup anyways. So that's why I'll rank it there. And then, yeah, it's a bit inspiring. Not overly inspiring because, you're going to have all those card types anyways, is what I'm saying. But it's a different direction than you usually see any other card. And I like this card. Have yet to see it, but would like to see it. So I give it a 7 out of 10. Cool card, cool card. Ooh, one of my favorite cards here. We have Hadron Alignment for 3, one of it being an island. Enchantment hexproof. Beginning your upkeep, you may reveal your hand. If you do, you win the game if you own a card named Hadron Alignment in exile, in your hand, in your graveyard, and on the battlefield. So that's 4 different places you need this card. So the build around potential for this card is a 0 out of 10 because currently in the Commander format, there is no way possible to have extra copies of this or set yourself up in a board state in a way where you could have this owned in exile in your hand, to my knowledge, unless someone's done this. All that good stuff. Difficulty, if it was possible, would probably be pretty hard because you have to have some exile effect in your hand on the battlefield and in the graveyard as well. So pretty hard to do. Inspiring, yeah, very inspiring. You're trying to do something very unique, and most decks aren't trying to do this. Yeah, I'll give it a high rating there. And my personal rating, if I saw someone with this, and especially Commander, I think it'd be pretty neat. So give it a high rating there overall. Moving forward, we have Hellkite Tyrant. 4 mana, 2 mountains. You get a flying trample dragon. Deals combat damage to player. Gain control of all artifacts that player controls. At the beginning of your upkeep, if you control 20 or more artifacts, you win the game. Cool. Build around potential, 3 out of 10. You could just, usually you just throw this in a Dragon Tribal and say it's good. But you could take the step further to go a little crazier with maybe extra treasures, maybe more than usual, or have a lot of artifacts of your own. So yeah, you could just throw this in an artifact tribal deck. So different places and go. So I'll give the build on there. Difficulty, it's not super hard to get 20 artifacts these days, between treasures and clues and food. Oh my. Academy of Manufacture is a card, so not super hard. Plus, you're stealing artifacts other players control, so very powerful effect. Inspiring, not particularly. There's nothing super new you're trying to do with this, and give it a personal rating of a 4 out of 10. So a little below average, but it's Wincon. Yeah, treasures do exist. Side note. Then you have the Laboratory Maniac, Jace Welder Mystery kind of effects. Give them a build around potential of 7 out of 10. Apologies. They both basically say, there's other stuff, but if you draw a card while your library has no cards in it, you win the game instead. Build around potential, 7 out of 10. You're really going down the route of self-mill, drawing a ton of cards, which is, mono blue would do that, or other decks, but you're taking it to the extreme of milling yourself, that kind of deal. Difficulty, there's a lot of support for this, so it's probably halfway through the road. If you see this out, and this can be interacted with, right? Like a lot of the other cards, but Lab Maniac on the field, you're about to draw your last card, it gets removed, so you lose the game instead, so something to note. Inspiring, about halfway to the point where, yeah, you're doing self-mill and trying to keep yourself alive at the same time. So pretty cool. And I give it a 6 out of 10, above average. And this total rating comes above average, 23. Cool. Versus like a Thassa's Oracle, right? Almost is the same thing, but really doesn't, right? For 2 mana, a lot of people know this card. Enters the battlefield. Look at the top X cards in your library, where X is your devotion to blue. Put one of them on top of your library and the rest on the bottom of your library in random order. If X is greater than or equal to the number of cards in your library, you win the game. So on the contrary, this card instead just combos with, a ham sandwich, right? So the build around potential is kind of a 2 out of 10. You could go down the devotion route if someone were to do that. Yeah, that's different than most decks, so that would be kind of neat. Merfolk Devotion, that'd be kind of cool. But the difficulty is like a 1 out of 10, inspiring 0 out of 10. They're just a lot of 2-card combos that just win the game with this. Hard to interact with since it's an ETB, all that good stuff. And then it's a 1 out of 10. It's most CDH decks, competitive Commander decks, Wincons. You see it everywhere. 4 out of 10. Liliana's Contract, right? Neat one. For 3 mana and 2 black, enchantment, enters the battlefield, draws you 4 cards, and lose 4 life. Already a good card on its own, right? Beginning your upkeep, you control 4 more demons with different names, you win the game. Build around potential? Yeah, I get above average. You're doing pretty much demon tribal or some fashion of it, whether it's Shadowborn Apostle or something like that. So you really gotta, if you go down the demon route, you can just throw it in there for the heck of it. But yeah, otherwise, you're just getting it for the card draw. Difficulty, have different. I know demons are usually more expensive creature type. However, there are ways to get more demons with different names. Inspiring, I'd say it's pretty inspiring. You're trying to, once again, have demons of different names and stuff, which is, every card is already unique. That's why it's on the lower end anyways. You can have multiple copies of the same name, so it's not super inspiring in that aspect. I give it halfway road, so a little below average. And the difficulty part mainly comes from the fact that these cards like Conspiracy, work because it turns all your other creatures into, can turn them all into demons. You could have 0 demons in your deck and this in your deck for a funny, neat interaction. So that's why they could have different build-arounds. Moving forward, we have the Luck Bobblehead from the Fallout set for 3 mana, Artifact Bobblehead. So it's a mana rock, or pay 1, roll 6-sided dice, X 6-sided dice, where X is the number of bobbleheads you control, then create a tap treasure token for each even result. If you roll 6 exactly 7 times, you win the game. So the difficulty on papers, it's a 10 out of 10, right? Because the chances of rolling 6 of 6-sided dice is below 0.01%. Not very high. There are different bobbleheads, right? But the build around could be cool. You could go the direction of I'm doing bobblehead tribal, right, where you play all the bobbleheads from the Fallout set. Or I think the more interesting idea is to do the clone effect on these bobbleheads, which maybe a deck I'm coming out with, hopefully, is going to be creating a whole bunch of token copies of Luck Bobblehead. So it is pretty inspiring that way because there are different directions you can take, and you're doing something pretty unique. Again, with the dice rolling mechanic, maybe you're doing a sub-theme there, of course. Artifact theme, all that good stuff. So, yeah, and I like this card a lot. I think it's going to have some interesting play in the Commander format, so I'll give it on the higher end. This is one of the higher cards, 34 out of 40. Cool. Would love to see it, And this is smart. This is all math above my knowledge, but you want to dive into deeper of the probability and stuff of rolling, 6/6s, kind of like Yahtzee in a way. So you're playing a different game here entirely, and that's kind of neat to see. Yeah, you took Yahtzee, put in Magic. Cool. Moving forward, you have Melia's Area for Naya colors, right? Enchantment. Beginning your upkeep, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control. If you control a creature with 5 power or greater. Cool. Buffs the board, then gain 10 life if you control a creature with 10 power or greater. Cool. Then you win the game if you control a creature with 20 power or greater. Cool. Build around halfway mark. You're either going wide with the tokens and trying to put counters on them just for the value, right? Or you're trying to build a creature up. So there are different directions. Difficulty, maybe a 3 out of 10. It's not super hard to double your power and that sort of stuff, even on your upkeep and stuff. And inspiring, I go a little bit lower than average, because you're already trying to make probably big creatures go stompy stomp anyways. But you can monolithic where you just make one creature go big. So, there's some inspiration there to take away from. You're trying to do something a little bit different. And I give it middle of the road, 5 out of 10. So gives us 17 overall. And we have Maze's End, right? This to me is the perfect card where it's straight in the middle of the road for me. Enters the battlefield tapped, add a mana, cool. And then for 3, return it to your hand, search your library for a gate card, put it in the battlefield, shuffle your library. If you control 10 or more gates with different names, you win the game. So yeah, The build around is a 7 out of 10. I'll give it that because you are throwing in all the gate lands and you're trying to ramp out different lands, not just basic lands, so you have to get the types that are not basics. You can get any lands, so your ramps a little catered a little bit differently. But again, I give it a little less of a difficulty because you are basically just ramping and ramping to win the game. And same deal with inspiring, because the card can just tutor out all your wins and that kind of stuff. There's not too many different directions you can go. You could go, like pillow fort in a way, or group hug to get here, try to lay low, play your gates, win the game. I give it a 5 out of 10. I think this is a middle of the road. Yeah, I'd rather either die to combat damage or lose the game to Maze's End. So not too much of a difference there for me. Moving on, we have Mechanized Productions for 2 and 2 islands. Enchantment R, right? You get to enchant an artifact control. At the beginning of your upkeep, create a token that's a copy of enchanted artifact. Then, if you control 8 or more artifacts, you win with the same name as one another. You win the game. So, in hindsight, super cool. But then you have stuff like clues, treasures, food tokens that came out. I threw this in one of my food deck as an alternate Wincon just for the heck of it. So yeah, the build around potential can be up there if you're trying to mass clone your stuff, or you can just create a whole bunch of treasures. So that's why difficulty is not super high up there. It already just generates value on you. Again, if you're doing this the proper way, it'd be a little bit harder. I say the proper way, but there's no proper thing in Magic. Or you could slap in a treasure token. Oh no, they killed that treasure token. How terrible. So not super hard to pull off. Could not super inspiring. You might just be doing clone deck in general anyways. And I give it a 5 out of 10. It's a win con. So 17, cool. Moving forward. Near Death Experience. I like this card a lot. So for 2 and 3 planes, you get enchantment. At the beginning of your upkeep, if you have exactly 1 life, you win the game. I will give a link to a deck where I mainly built around this mechanic. Shout out to my own stuff. I'll link it somewhere here. But the build around potential, I think it's a 10 out of 10. Because you are trying to manipulate your life total to be exactly 1. And can be a lot harder than one is to believe. Because you're constantly taking damage. And you have to plan out. You kind of playing like 3D chess, 4D chess in a way. Where you're planning out your turns ahead. Is how much damage can someone do to me? And is there any way I can lower my life total to 1 at the beginning of my upkeep? So difficulty 9 out of 10, because you're kind of, I say the word like edging around the corner, right? Edging on the, because if you go too close, you will go off that cliff and kind of explode. If you go below 1, you'll lose the game off the bats. You could die to a shock, some sort of ping, any sort of damage. Unless you play some cards like Phyrexian on Life, that kind of deal, that kind of protect you in a way, or you phase out. So it takes some planning ahead for sure. And inspiring, yeah, your whole deck is going to be built a lot differently if this is one of your main game plans. You can see a lot of cards that you normally don't see, so I like that. And my personal rating, I'd give it a 10 out of 10. Super biased, but it's got one of the highest ratings from me thus far. So I'll put it up there. I think it's cool. Moving forward, now I know my ABCs. For 3 mana, 2 of it being islands, you get an enchantment from Unaffinity. At the beginning of your upkeep, if you control permanents with names that include all 26 letters of the English alphabet, you win the game. So, very interesting card, especially with the translations of cards in different languages. Build around potential 0 out of 10, it is banned. Difficulty, give it a 7 out of 10. I don't really know the cards out there. There is a Reddit link down here if you're curious about that. Has the fastest win with now I know my ABCs. I think it's a 3-card combo and it's in a different language, so bear that in mind. It's funny. So difficulty up there. Inspirational, yeah. You're trying to put a lot of text up there in the text box, right, of creatures and your permanents. So yeah, the 7 out of 10. I don't know what else to say about this. Cool. If I saw someone win this, I'd be like, neat. So, moving forward. Ramses Assassin Lord. Now, harp on this a little bit. For 2 mana and Dimir, you get a legendary creature, human assassin, death touch. Other assassins get buffed. Whenever a player loses a game, if they were attacked this turn by an assassin you control, you win the game. So build around potential, I give it 8 out of 10. Again, you can go assassin tribal, some conspiracy, mass with nexus stuff, or if this was your only creature in the deck, you could have a sneaky win. You know, if you could sneak this through somehow and just, you know, kill them with him, you don't really need to do assassin tribal. You could win the game that way. So different build arounds, and that's why the difficulty I'd say is a little bit, you know, above average, because again, you have to attack and get through, which these days Commander format is harder and harder. And inspiring is the same deal, because again, he could just win on his own, or you could build around it with other assassins, that kind of deal. And I give it a 7 out of 10. I like this card. Basically, to me, what this says is commander damage is backing away, where you can, just gives winning by combat a little bit easier of a time, because it also just, instead of, and it gives a different direction. That's part of inspiration, personal rating for me, right? Like, you're really taking an interesting approach where if you knock someone out of the game early, you usually feel bad if the game goes on for another 40 minutes plus or whatever. But if you take them out with this card, you take everybody out, which is pretty unique, because you can kind of kick the man who's down just to win the game, is the idea. So different direction than most decks take, instead of just killing a player to kill a player. So I give it a 27 out of 40. Pretty cool card. Then we have Revel Riches. 5 mana. Enchantment. Whenever a creature an opponent controls dies, create a colorless treasure, artifact token. Sacrifice this artifact. Add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool at the beginning of your upkeep. If you control 10 or more treasures, you win the game. Yay! So, generate 2 treasures. You want to be killing other opponent's creatures. Build around 3 out of 10. You'll be killing creatures anyways. Maybe you ramp that up a bit. Not that hard to get 10 or more treasures. You can create them yourself. You don't even have to use his ability. And same note, not super inspiring. Treasure tribal, whatever. Kind of cool. And I give this 3 out of 10. I know a lot of people just like this card for value, and I wish that was the case. But again, it has that clause where you win the game. So I give it, 1 out of 4, which is, something. So, Revel Riches. Simic Ascendancy for Simic, right? Funny enough, you get enchantment. You can put a counter on creatures you control, and whenever 1 or more counters are put on a creature you control, put that many growth counters on Simic Ascendancy. And at the beginning of your upkeep, if it has 20 more growth counters on, you win the game. So build around potential, 6 out of 10. You might just slip this in if you're doing +1/+1 counters. Anyways, but it gives an outlet to win the game on itself, which is neat to see. Not super hard. Simic has tons of ways to grow counters, proliferate counters, all the good stuff, so not super hard to do. Inspiring, not really. Simic is already doing proliferation, all that good stuff. Maybe go a little bit heavier into this. It is kind of mono direction, and I give it a 5 out of 10. Middle of the road, ends the game. Simic players are dirtling around, gives them an out. Cool. Total 19 out of 20. Sure. Should be 19 out of 40. Moving on. I think lastly we have Triskaidekaphile. Butcher that. 2 mana, human creature, no maximum hand size. Cool. At the beginning of your upkeep, if you have exactly 13 cards in your hand, you win the game. So the build around potential is pretty up there, right? You're going to want a lot of card draw, but you're trying to take your deck in a direction where you can hold on to the specific number 13, right? So between playing cards, you have to leverage what do you want to play, how you can draw cards, that kind of deal. So I think it's kind of cool. Getting 13 of your cards in your hand, not super hard, but it's, above average, I'd say, with all the discard, disruption, plus keeping this creature alive, right? And in that same aspect, that's super inspiring. Because you want to just be drawing cards, right? Having the right amount of cards. And I give it a 6 out of 10. I think it's super neat. Someone want this? Yeah, pretty cool. I give it a 22 out of 40. And without that further ado, a bit longer of a video. If you stuck around for this long, thanks for hanging out. But yeah, like, comment, subscribe if you liked it. If you want to see something different, let me know. I got some ideas. And thank you for watching. Till the next one, this has been Momo versus MTG. Take care.